Good morning. We're glad you could join us this morning for the Sunday School Hour. We are going to try this and see how it works, but we are glad that you could join us for this hour. In Sunday School, we've been going through the book of Esther. Uh, we've been traveling through this book of Esther, and we are picking up right here, right in the beginning of chapter 3. So we've only went through 2 chapters of the book of Esther, but we're starting the third now. What you need to know about Esther is this: God's name is never mentioned in the book of Esther. Uh, it's never there. It's never mentioned. It's just not. It's not mentioned at all. Uh, what you have in Esther is this: you have uh, Esther, you have Haman, you have Mordecai, and you have a king. Some of your Bibles will say King Ahasuerus. Others will say other things. This king is Xerxes. Xerxes, the Persian king. That's what many of your scholars believe. Uh, Xerxes is the king of the Persian Empire, and Persia has defeated Babylon and is now the empire of the day. They have 127 provinces. It's a large empire of that day. And what you have here is Xerxes was raising funds to go to war with Greece. And what you have here is he's had this big, long feast to help for strategy, to help with raising funds for this war on Greece, because that's the only place that his daddy hasn't conquered. Uh, so Xerxes raises up the greatest army man has ever seen. And he goes and he attacks Greece. Well, Greece wins the battle. Xerxes comes back to Persia with his tail between his legs. He's defeated. Uh, his vast army has been defeated. His large navy was defeated. And Xerxes has already banished his queen Vashti because she would not come in and perform before these men. So he comes in. He's down, depressed. He realizes that Vashti is no longer there. And his people that are around him decide, hey, it would be a good idea to have a new queen for our king. He's lonely. He's by himself. So they start doing a TV show. They said, hey, we're gonna have a TV show, The Bachelor. And that's what they do. They go and gather. Josephus says they go and gather 400 young women, 400 from all over across the empire. And all these women get one night with the king. Now, what you've got to realize is this is whether Xerxes picks this woman, likes this woman, or doesn't like this woman out of the 400, they are part of his harem regardless. They're they are part of his concubine. There's no going back. So that happened. Esther chosen to be queen. The Bible tells us that Esther was lovely and beautiful. She was just as beautiful on the inside as she was on the outside, and Xerxes just falls head over heels for this woman. He's crazy about her. He's never going to tell this woman no. So Xerxes is in love with this woman. So he comes back and he throws another feast. He even gives Esther a holiday. They have this holiday. Well, during this time, two of the king's bodyguards that guard the king's doorway, named Bigthan and Teresh, are mad. They're furious. They decide that they want to kill the king. They hatch a plot to kill the king. Well, Mordecai finds out that there's a plan to lay hands on Xerxes. So Mordecai tells the only person he trusts 100%, and that's Esther. Esther goes and tells the king about this plot. It says, hey, Mordecai tells him. Now, one thing we realize about Mordecai that we learn about him is he's an official of Persia. He sits within the king's gate. More than likely, he is a judge of Persia. He is part of Xerxes' government there. So he has got a job with the government. He is a government official. Well, Xerxes would have known who Mordecai is, but after Esther told him in Mordecai's name about this plot to take his life, the king does an investigation, finds out that it's true, kills these two men, and that's where we are. There's no celebration for Mordecai for saving the king's life. There's no promotion for uh, Mordecai. There's no there's nothing. Only thing we're told is it was written down in the book of Chronicles in the presence of the king. That was all. Mordecai gets no acknowledgement for saving the life of the king. Now, I have just speed read you through the first two chapters of Esther. So now we're starting with Esther chapter 3. In Esther chapter 3, it says this: After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, son of Hammedatha the Agagite, and advanced him and set his seat above all the princes who were with him. So here we are. We are introduced to this third person that we have in this book of Esther. You were introduced to Haman. Now, we don't know what Haman gets promoted. We don't know what he gets promoted from. We don't know what he did before all this. We don't know. Maybe he's the favorite official. Maybe he was maybe he was a confidant. We don't know. But I can tell you this: Haman's name means magnificent. That's what his name means, is magnificent. So Haman comes, and Haman is promoted. He gets the promotion. Now think about that. Haman gets promoted, and Mordecai gets nothing. Not he don't get a thing. Uh, he don't even get a thank you card. He don't even get he don't even get a basket of fruit. Mordecai doesn't get nothing, but yet Haman gets promoted. Now, Haman, we read it when we read in verse 1 about this man Haman. You really got to understand something about Haman, because what you're going to see is there's an important factor there, and that's his ancestry. We are told twice in this chapter. Look in chapter 3, verse 1. After these things, King Ahasuerus promoted Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite. You see that? Now in verse 10 it says this: So the king took his signet ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of the Jews. Now why is that important? Well, I'll tell you why that's important. The Bible has told us twice of his ancestry. This is important because it's going to help you understand what's going on in chapter 3. I've got to explain this to you so you can explain what's going on with the way that these two men act towards one another for the rest of this chapter. You need to know this because you've got to understand why Haman acts towards Mordecai the way Haman does, and why Mordecai acts towards Haman the way Mordecai does. So what you have here is you have Haman the Agagite. Now, an Agagite is a descendant of Agag. Agag is the king of the Amalekites. Now, what you have here is a guy by the name of Amalek. Amalek was a descendant of Esau. So basically, the Amalekites and the Jews are cousins. And the Jews are coming out of 400 years of slavery. 400 years of slavery and bondage. They're coming out. And what do their cousins do? They don't give them a high five and say, hello, cuz, but they attack them. They attack the Jews. And what you see in Exodus chapter 17, verse 14 is this. Then your God is talking to Moses, and it says, Then the Lord said to Moses, Write this for a memorial in the book and recount it in the hearing of Joshua. that I will utterly blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. God said, because of what they have done, I am going to blot out Amalek. I'm going to blot it out. I'm going to get rid of them. Well, what you have here is the background. Well, then you get 1 Samuel chapter 15. You get 1 Samuel chapter 15. What happens in 1 Samuel 15 is this. God, uh, King Saul is the king, and God says, now's the time that I'm going to blot the Amalekites off the face of the earth. Now's the time that I'm going to take care of the Amalekites. I'm going to do what Exodus chapter 17 said. 500 years later, I'm going to blot the Amalekites out. So he tells King Saul, this is what I want you to do. I want you to go and attack the Amalekites, and I want you to kill every man, woman, child. I want to even kill the animals. Not nothing left over. So that's what Saul does. Saul goes to war with the Amalekites in 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 7. And Saul attacked the Amalekites from Hivilah all the way to Shur, which is the east of Egypt. That's what he does. He attacks the Amalekites. But guess what King Saul does? King Saul does what King Saul always usually does. And that's whatever he wants to do. So King Saul, instead of going in and killing every man, woman, child, animal, guess what Saul does? He don't do that. Look in verse. He also took Agag, king of the Amalekites, alive. So he does not kill. He does not kill Agag. In fact, not only does he not kill Agag, he don't kill all the animals. They take plunder from this. So this is what happens now. They take the plunder. Well, you've got you have got Samuel now coming in. You've got Samuel now coming in, and Samuel says, Saul, 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 Saul. What are you doing, son? Saul, what's going on here? Saul, what is happening here? What have you done? Have you not listened to God? Did you not obey the Lord's commandment? And Saul said, what? I took sheep so I could sacrifice these sheep to the Lord. And what you see in 1 Samuel chapter 15 is this, verse 22. Samuel said, has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? He says, Saul, is it better to sacrifice to God, or is it better to listen and obey the word of God? He says, as in obeying the voice of the Lord, behold, to obey is better than to sacrifice, and to heed than to the fat of the ram. Samuel says, Saul, 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 no, no, no. You were supposed to kill everything. You were supposed to kill all these animals. And Saul, trying to make it sound better than what it actually was, says, well, we are going to sacrifice these animals anyway to God. And Samuel says, no, 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 no. You weren't supposed to do that. It's better to heed the word of the Lord than to go out on your own and make decisions like that, Saul. So, this is what happens. Samuel talking to Saul. You see this here in 1 Samuel chapter 22, verse 27. And as Samuel turned around to go away, Saul seized the edge of his robe and it tore. So Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today, and given it to a neighbor of yours who is better than you. There you have Saul losing the kingdom. God has torn the kingdom away from King Saul. But here's the interesting part. Samuel comes back and he says, where's Agag? Where's Agag, the king of these Amalekites? Because I'm sure you're wondering, why are you going through all this? What's this got to do with Esther? Well, here it is. Where is Agag? So they bring Agag in. And what you have here is this. Verse 32 of 1 Samuel 15. Then Samuel said, bring Agag, king of the Amalekites, here to me. So Agag came to him cautiously. And Agag said, surely the bitterness of death is past. But Samuel said, as your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be childless among women. And Samuel hacked Agag in pieces before the Lord in Gilgal. Samuel hacked Agag. Now, let me get to Esther. Haman is an Agagite, a descendant of Agag. Mordecai, we are told in Esther chapter 2, verse 5, is this. In Shushan, the city in the citadel, there was a certain Jew whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish. Kish was the father of King Saul. You have Haman, an Agagite, a descendant from Agag, Mordecai, a descendant of Kish, the father of King Saul. Let me tell you what that means here. You've got bad blood. You've got the Hatfields and the McCoys. You've got two families that were absolute bitter enemies. They uh, they just didn't like each other. Haman, Agagite, Mordecai, a Jew. And what reason why I took all that time to explain this to you is this. Um, you need to know why these two men act the way they do act together, and you're going to see why that's important. Well, that's all I'll have this morning. We're glad that you joined us. I'll see you next week as we continue through chapter 3.